Hi, we are engineering brothers, and once again we have got our second problem for a signal flow graph additional problem 2 over here. And you can see that we have got our signal flow graph which is been converted from our, you can say, from a block diagram to this diagram over here. And we should start from this diagram to see what is going to be the final transfer function formation in this case over here. And quite naturally, I have analyzed in our previous part of our video that how to solve the signal flow graph over there. Please do follow our previous videos. In our previous videos, we have given you all the step-by-step analogies over there, and that one is very important to have those considered part over here. But in this given problem, we should consider only the solution part over here. I'm just going to solve this given equations over here, or given this signal flow graph over here. So let us start our considered part over here. First, we should identify our forward paths. Our first step will be our forward paths. So what are the forward paths? The forward paths are, quite naturally, it has started from our RS and ultimately it has ended at our CS without changing any direction of this arrow or through this path over here. Quite naturally, we have got two forward paths we can see from this diagram. The first forward path I'm just going to name as P1. Quite naturally, this one is G1, G2, G3 and G4, and just simply multiply these gain paths over there, or gain path through this path, to actually have the fast forward path over here. Quite naturally, the gain for that one will be 1 multiplied by G1 multiplied by our G2 multiplied by our G3, G4, and once again 1. Now this is going to be the fast forward path over here, and ultimately the final value for that one will be G1, G2, G3, G4. Similarly, we have got our another forward paths over here, which is going to be our P2. Say the second forward path will be our P2, and for that one I'm just going to take our another way or another path to fulfill the same criteria over here, which is it has started from our RS and it has ended at our CS, and we have got our another forward path over here, which is going to be this one. You can see that this path is our another forward path over here, and once again the second forward path will be, quite naturally, once again we should, in order to find out the gain for that forward path, we should consider the gain for that individual paths in between these nodes over here. Okay, now quite naturally, in between our N1 and N8 we have got the gain path for that forward path section will be G5. In between our N8 and N7 we have got the gain path of G6. Next, in between our N7 and N6 we have got the G7, and in between our N6 and N5 we have got the gain path as G8, and for that last part in between our N5 and CS we have got the gain path as 1. Now if you just simply multiply these two, this factor over here, we have ultimately got the forward paths over here, which is quite naturally G5, G6, G7 and G8. This is going to be our second forward path over here. Now the first part is been considered over here, and after looking at this signal flow graph, I can see that there is no other any other forward paths over here. Only two forward paths are available over here. I'm just going to repeat this portion once again. You can see that from RS to N1 to N2 to N3 to N4 to N5, and from N5 at the last point we have got the CS. So these are our nodes that has been indicated just like that one, and you can see that the forward path for that one will be 1 multiplied by G1 multiplied by G2 multiplied by G3 multiplied by G4 multiplied by 1. So this is the exact way to find out the forward paths over here, and ultimately we have got the final answer for that one will be our G1, G2, G3, G4. And for that next forward path, we should take another path direction over here, which is from this RS to N1 to N8 to N7 to N6 to N5, and ultimately it has ended at our CS. Now we should follow up this gain in between those nodes over here. Once again, in between our RS and 1, we have got the 1. I have written over here as 1. In between our N1 and N8, we have got the next gain as G5. So this is going to be our G5. In between our N8 and N7, we have got the G6. So this is going to be our G6. And in between our N7 and N6, we have got the G7. In between our N6 and N5, we have got the gain as G8. And ultimately, in between our N5 and CS, we have got the gain as 1. Now you should have the final answer of forward path over here, which is G5, G6, G7, G8 over here. Now this is going to be our first step over here. In our next step, we should find out the individual loops over here. The second step will be our loops. In our previous video, I have given you all the step-by-step analogies over there and how to solve or how to get to the final point for our transfer function analogy over here. If you still have any doubts, please let us know in the comment section for better understanding. Do like, do share our videos and keep following our channel. Now let us go to the loop consideration over here. We have got 4 loops or 4 individual loops over here. How do I identify that? Because you can just follow the arrow for the signal flow graph over here. Now, if you do understand this concept, you should follow that from your node N2, it has started and ultimately it has ended at the same point over here. It is actually making a closed path over here. That is why this has been called as loop. Okay, now from N2 to N3, the gain is G2, and after N3, it has ultimately returned back to the N2 over here. Now, quite naturally, this one should be our first loop over here, and that is the definition for our loop. Now, you can see that we have got our 4 loops over here, and I'm just going to write down the individual loops, or what is the individual loop gain for that considered part over here. Now, quite naturally, this one is G2 multiplied by 1. G2 multiplied by 1, which actually gives us the first loop as G2. Next one should be this loop over here, and it has started from our N3 to N4, and from N4 it has ended at our N3. Quite naturally, the second loop will be this one, which is quite naturally the gain G3, and from our N4 it has ended at our N3, which is the gain path for that one will be our H3, because the return path is going to be our H3. Now this is going to be our second loop over here. In our next loop, we should find out the next loop for this one. Now we should consider this path over here. Quite naturally, you can see that from our node N8 to N7, the gain is G6, and from our N7, and it has ultimately fed back or going back to the G5 once again over here, or going back to the N8 over here. Now this is going to be our another loop over here, which is I'm just named as L3, and quite naturally the gain for that given loop will be our G6 H6. This one is our G6, and this one is coming back towards our node for our N8. Now for the next part, we have got the L4, which is on another loop over here. Now this one is our last one over here. Quite naturally, it has started from our N7, and from N7 to N6 the gain is G7, and from N6 it is once again coming back towards our N7, and the feedback path for that path will be our H7. Now quite naturally, the gain for that particular loop will be our G7, and quite naturally our H7 over here. Now these are our individual loops over here. In our next step, we should find out our much needed considered part for our two non-touching loops over there. But before I go into that, I want to repeat this portion once again, because this portion is very, very vital. First, in our first step, we should find out the forward path over here. And what is the definition of our forward path? The definition of our simplest form of forward path will be, it has started from our RS and ultimately it has ended towards our CS without interrupting or without having any return path for that signal flow graph over here. Quite naturally, that path will be our P1. So this one, if you just do follow my finger, you can see that according to the direction of our arrow, we have identified that the first forward path will be this one, which is the gain for that one will be G1, G2, G3, G4, and the second forward path will be this one, this lower part over here, and the gain for that forward path will be our G5, G6, G7, G8. And in our next considered part, we have identified our loops over here. You can see that these are our loops, and I have already written the individual loops gain over here. I hope you have totally understood up to this one. If you still have any doubts, please let us know in the comment section for better understanding. Do like, do share our videos and keep following our channel. Just wait for my next part.
If you like my video, so what are you waiting for? Please do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon for more updates and stay tuned to the channel. Thank you and goodbye.